This episode of Homemade was previously recorded in front of a live stream audience who asked questions and cook along during the show. If you love cooking and want to join us in the kitchen, visit homemadecooking.com to register for free live classes. Now, let's get cooking.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today at Homemade. I'm Chef Diana, and Chef Kat is here today to moderate and help you in the chat with any questions you might have. So I love this dish and the crackers that we're making today. I do want to start with getting our farro cooked. There's a couple of things, if you're cooking at home, I really want to honor what you're doing and honor your time and keep you on track with what we're doing here. So I'm going to start the farro. So I have a boiling pot of water, just a small pot of water here on the stove, and it was rapidly boiling over a couple of minutes ago. So it's coming back up to a simmer. I'm doing 3/4 of a cup of farro. Now the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of cooked farro. So 3/4 of a cup of raw farro is going to give you just about 1.5 cups. So farro goes in. We're going to cook it kind of like pasta. So basically, we're going to drain it when it's done, okay? So a little bit of salt just to enhance the flavor. So we're going to keep that just at a low simmer for about 30 minutes. The soup is going to come together pretty quickly. So the farro is what took the longest time, and then our cracker dough does need to chill a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and get that started. I did grind the oats and the almonds ahead of time because I didn't want the machine running the whole time. So those are ground ahead of time. So I'm making half of a batch of the crackers just for the sake of time. So I'm going to use a half of a cup instead of 1 cup of almond flour or almond meal. And then I have a 1/4 cup, so the recipe calls for a half a cup. And if, by the way, I just need to say this, if you're making a full batch, please proceed and make a full batch. These are so fabulous. Once you have the dough made, you can wrap it in plastic wrap and put it into the freezer, and then it's all ready to go. It comes out of the freezer. It's super thin, easy to cut, and you bake it. You have a wonderful accompaniment for any soup or salad you're making. If somebody pops in unexpectedly, you've got a delicious little treat. It's not a cracker that needs cheese or anything on top of it. It's a cracker that is absolutely fantastic just on its own. So make a full batch, just maybe bake half of them and keep the rest in the freezer. So the oats next. So we've got the almond flour, the oats, and then the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. Grated is best. So not the shredded, but grated. Fresh rosemary. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it grows really, really well, and it's very hardy. This was actually from my garden yesterday. I've got this huge bush that's hard to contain. So we've got just about the amount that we need there. We have dried thyme today, not fresh thyme, so we'll use a little bit of that if you want to. Your herbs can vary. You can totally vary your herbs. I would stay away from the delicate herbs like cilantro, maybe not in here, or chives.
Especially because it's being baked. You want something that can handle that
Absolutely,
heat.
Absolutely. So the hardier herbs that we're using today. Thyme is hardy, oregano, marjoram are hardy, rosemary is hardy. So I would stick with the hardy herbs. And then the next ingredient that we have is salt and pepper. Now we are using a salty cheese. We're using Parmesan cheese today. So I'm going to go pretty easy on the salt, but I certainly am going to add it, again, to bring out the flavors of everything else that we're putting in there. So a little salt, a little black pepper after the rosemary, and thyme, whatever you're using. I pre-measured this ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and put that in. And then the butter does need to be chilled for this, not 100% absolutely chilled. Just make sure it's not melted or separating from the warm room, okay? So we just took this out of the refrigerator. It's cubed up a little bit. It's half of the recipe. So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter cut up into about 1/2-inch cubes. And then, you know what I did at home? And I'm actually just gonna do it. The recipe reads great and it works wonderfully. By accident, I put the ground nuts in there, and it worked great. So I'm gonna put half of them in, and then with the other half, I'll show you what we do as the recipe calls for. You roll them out and then you press the nuts into the dough, just in case you're wondering, and you just can't wait until we get to that. That's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna just bring this together in the food processor or by hand. So the ice water, we're not going to maybe put the whole amount in. I think it says 2 to 4 tablespoons, and I'm doing half. So you're just going to put the water in just until the dough comes together. So I'm going to begin with just pressing this down for starters, trying to keep it kind of uniform. I usually shoot for a rectangle. It kind of depends on the shape you're going to cut your crackers, because we're going to have options. So we're going to have maybe a round cutter, or maybe we'll cut them, in the ones we have today that I made yesterday are triangle shaped. So just think about, how am I going to cut these? So I like to use parchment paper. Don't worry about getting it real thin right now. We're going to roll it again. I'm just rolling it thin enough right now so that we can chill it in the amount of time that we have. Okay, so maybe about between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch thick. And I'm just going to keep it between these pieces of parchment paper. And then Chef Kat, I know you're busy over there, but do you mind just sticking that in the fridge real quick?
Chef.
Thank you so much. You're awesome. Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any questions about the crackers so far, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our vegetable prep. Different ways to cut an onion. So I would say we don't have to go like a mince, which is really, really, really small. Maybe a small dice, which is like 1/4 of an inch. So again, I'm going to take my knife, flat side is down, and cut across about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the farro because it's finished, and just drain it over the sink. And then we're just going to let that hang out there until our soup is ready. Celery, washed, trimmed. Let me go ahead and get this pan on a little bit. That's getting hot. Actually, we're going to go ahead and put our olive oil into the soup pot. And then we'll get our onions started. We're not looking for a deep caramelization on this. We're just looking for, I refer to it as sweating the vegetables. So we'll get those started, and then we'll just throw the celery right on top as soon as we get there. And we'll aim for around the same size of the onion. Okay, so just strips. Now see, if I had that whole big long piece of celery, it'd be kind of difficult to make those little strips. We don't have to be perfect with this. And then we'll go ahead and put that. The onions are doing a nice little sizzle. We'll keep an eye on them so they don't caramelize. So it's just controlling the heat and the time. That's all it is. So I went ahead and peeled 2 sort of medium to large-ish garlic cloves. I like to use this microplane for garlic. It makes things easy, as long as you keep your fingers away from the blades. Okay, so that's all that's going to go in the soup right now as far as vegetables. The cabbage has been washed, so I'll just cut it into, cabbage heads are going to vary from what you get in the store in size. So we'll go ahead and put the cabbage in. Okay, so we'll have our baking sheet here. Oven is preheated, ready to go. So you might need a little extra almond flour, and you might not. We're gonna roll it just a little bit thinner, which is easier to do after it's been chilled. And you can rotate this way. Okay, so then that comes off. And again, you could use, I just wanted to be set up for you ahead of time. You could use this parchment paper to not be wasteful as your baking paper. You don't have to have a separate one and throw this away. I'm very frugal. Round, triangles, squares, whatever you like, whatever you like. So we'll just cut some rounds, and then remember to add that little extra crunch on top. You can either add it on each one after you cut them, but probably best to sprinkle it over the whole thing. And I'm not doing this very evenly, so it's chilled. I'll just take my hand, clean, dry hand, spread it out. You know what else would be really good on here? If you didn't put too much salt, how can you tell? Just taste a little bit of the dough. There's no raw eggs or raw flour or anything in here to be concerned about. If it could use a little more salt, sprinkle a little sea salt on there too, a little crunchy sea salt. It'd be delicious. These are gonna come off onto the baking sheet. All right, we're gonna go, let's check them in 7 minutes. Okay, we've got nice sweated vegetables here. At this point, we're going to add our broth. We're using chicken broth today. You can use a vegetable broth. I wouldn't recommend water. So we're going to cut the broccoli into what we call broccoli florets. It's been washed. I'm going to save some of these stalks for a salad later. So broccoli's just about ready to go. The water, I'm going to turn it up just a little bit so it comes to a boil quickly. Waiting to add the salt. Thank you. I'm going to rotate halfway, and then we'll go another 7 minutes. And then we'll take a peek at them. They're doing really, really nicely. And then the zucchini is the last thing I think that has to go in here. I've washed it. I'm going to cut off both ends, just a little trim. Salad or no, maybe not the stem end, maybe the other piece. And then I'm going to take the zucchini and cut it in manageable pieces, just as I did the celery. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut down around the interior, the middle, the seeds. Okay? This is actually a really, really nice zucchini. It's not super watery and seedy like a lot of them are. That can totally go into our soup. Sometimes you are, with a cucumber, it's like a cucumber or a zucchini, you cut around, and this is like all watery and whatever. This is nice and dense, and actually that can totally go into our soup. And then I'm going to cut nice diced zucchini, soup spoon sized. And we can just add a little bit of the kale for now. So kale, beans can go in pretty soon too. We've got a can of white beans, cannellini, northern white beans. It doesn't really matter. It's super nutritional. So I'm going to go ahead and add the beans and to the broth, which is just about ready to come to a simmer. It's nice and hot. It's steaming. I don't know if you can see that at home, but it's nice and steamy, so it should come to a simmer here pretty quickly. And then this is just boiling water. I'm going to add my salt now. I didn't want to add it earlier because the water has a tendency to boil down, and then the salt flavor intensifies and it kind of mucks up the pot too. I'm actually going to add like a tablespoon of salt. I'm going to cook a lot of vegetables in there, so close to a tablespoon, and you don't have to measure it, just a fair amount of salt. The salt is going to not only flavor, but it's going to also set the green color in our vegetables. So it helps keep them nice and vibrant and green. So of these 3 vegetables on the cutting board, the broccoli is going to take the longest to cook, right? So I'm going to put the broccoli in. This is going to go really fast. And then I'm just going to maybe count to 10 or just move really slow. Follow with the zucchini. Zucchini's going to go really quick. So in goes the zucchini.
And you can do this with any kind of like green vegetable. Especially, I recommend doing this with green beans. Then it holds the color when you saute it.
What about Brussels sprouts?
Absolutely.
Asparagus. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And then the kale's going to be really fast. And this is this beautiful, we call it lacinato kale or dino kale. So that's just going to be really, really quick. And then I have if I was making the soup ahead of time, I would pull the vegetables out and I would shock them into ice water. So this is called shocking. But if you're eating it right away, we're just going to go ahead and put it right in the soup. So I have control over the crunchiness of the broccoli. I've set that beautiful green color. I've added a little bit of seasoning with the salt, and we're going to serve this right away. So you don't need to worry about shocking today. But again, it's nice, especially if you're having somebody over or if you want to prep dinner ahead of time, then you have your vegetables cooked, blanched, shocked, and then all you do is reheat your soup and then dump them in there.
Yeah, those vegetables really got super vibrant in that water.
Pretty? Yeah, they're so pretty. I don't know what would happen to the purple Napa if we put it in there, but I'd sure like to find out. So here we go. Absolutely delicious. Let's see, that burner shut off. The stove's been working well for me today, huh? Until now. That's okay, it's nice and hot. Optional things to put on here. So we have our farro, which is in the recipe. So here's the farro. And I could talk about herbs forever too. There's beautiful fresh basil here. I keep it in ice water. And even if in the refrigerator, I keep it in ice water. So it stays, basil is a delicate herb and it wilts really, really easily. So I keep it in ice water, I refresh it. And then you could we call it a chiffonade, a fine little ribbon to sprinkle on top. I wouldn't put a whole leaf on top because, as we talked about, the eating in a soup spoon, if you're eating this delicious soup with all these flavors, you don't want to come across a big piece of basil and try and navigate that, right? So if you're going to use it, it's fabulous. Flavor is wonderful in there, but do a nice little chiffonade, thin little ribbon. And if you would like to make or buy a pesto, typically pesto has basil in it. I made this pesto sticking with the almond theme. I made it with almonds and with, I actually made it with kale. Hello. Sticking with the theme, with kale. So it's almond kale pesto. So nice theme with the soup. The soup recipe calls for a half a cup, actually it's a full cup of almond milk, unsweetened almond milk. Delicious in here. It gives it a nice little silkiness, little smoothness. Not necessary, but definitely a nice option if you would like it. And if you have almond milk, it definitely does add a nice little textural and flavor thing. But these are just options. And then if you feel like you do need a little bit more, I have some poached chicken breasts. So just super simple, low temperature, lean chicken breast. Cooked it until it was cooked all the way through, cooled it, and then just gave it a little shred. Okay, so that is a nice option. And our crackers are perfect, just in the nick of time. So we've got the crackers here. You don't want to try and, I know you want to try and pick one up right away, because I really do, because I wish you could smell
Everything
these.
smells fantastic.
I wish you could smell these.
Here.
They smell so good. But they're super crumbly. Remember, it's a short dough. It's a crumbly dough. So they're warm. And if I tried to pick one up right away, it would crumble. So we need about 5 minutes to just let them sit until you can comfortably pick one up. So I want to bring my soup back to a simmer here if I can. So I'm going to put these on a cooling rack over here, or actually we can just put them right on top of here. Let them cool a little bit. And then farro would go in, and it's had a fair amount of time to cool. Farro's had fair amount of time to cool. And then poached chicken. And then I might want to just stick this into the microwave for a quick little, or even just a warm oven. If it's a heat-proof bowl, just a nice little warm oven. Soup can go on top. And it's so beautiful. Do you see the bright color of the broccoli?
It looks so good and vibrant.
Crunch to it. And then a little pesto. You could either make more sense to sort of drizzle it around, right? So disperse it. And then these are the crackers that we made ahead of time. So I cut these ones that I made yesterday into a triangle shape. And it's a delicious meal. Mm-hmm. You're gonna get over here pretty soon, aren't you?
For sure.
It's so good. And the broccoli is beautiful in color and crispy. Delicious. Again, for me, it's a little tiny bit under-seasoned, but I can add a little salt at this point, right? But if I'd added too much in the beginning, I can't take it out. So after we sign off, I'm gonna add a little salt and finish that. Oh my God, so good. Thank you so much, everybody. Homemaders, enjoy, and just really wonderful being with you today. Thank you so much. Enjoy, keep cooking. Hope to see you next time.
Hey there, I'm Joel Gammon. I'm the head chef and founder of Homemade, and we launched Homemade with the idea that we want to bring cooking and the kitchen to the world. So if you love cooking and want to join us in one of our free live stream cooking classes, head to our website, homemadecooking.com. That's homemadecooking.com to register today. Now, sit back, relax, watch a little bit more cooking maybe, and enjoy the rest of your flight.